Karoline Leavitt adjusted her earpiece as she wrapped up the final press briefing of the day. It had been another relentless afternoon in the White House briefing room, where the rapid-fire questions from the press corps left little room for hesitation. Being the White House press secretary for President Donald Trump was an honor, but also a challenge, one that required sharp wit, unwavering composure, and an iron will. As she gathered her notes and prepared to leave, her phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. The text read, "Ms. Leavitt, the President and the First Family cordially invite you to a private dinner at the White House residence tonight at 7 p.m. Dress code, business casual. We look forward to your presence." Karoline blinked at the screen. An invitation to dine with the Trump family? She had been working in the administration for months, yet she had never received such a personal invitation. Normally, formal meetings and strategy sessions were the extent of her interactions with the First Family, beyond the occasional polite exchange in the hallways. She hesitated before responding. "Thank you for the invitation. I'll be there." A nervous excitement settled in her stomach. What could this dinner be about? Was it a discussion about media strategies? A private acknowledgement of her work? Or something else entirely? She glanced at her reflection in the mirror of her office. Her usual navy blue blazer and crisp white blouse would suffice, but she swapped her formal heels for a more comfortable pair. Tonight, she wouldn't be addressing the press. She would be sitting at the dinner table of one of the most famous families in the world. As she made her way through the White House corridors toward the private residence, a flood of thoughts raced through her mind. The staff greeted her with warm nods, and the elegance of the White House at dusk was breathtaking. It was easy to forget, in the whirlwind of political battles and media firestorms, that beyond the grandeur of this place was a family, just like any other, living their private lives behind these historic walls. When she arrived at the entrance to the family dining room, a butler gestured for her to enter. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. To her surprise, the setting was far more intimate than she expected. The dining room was warmly lit, with a polished mahogany table set for a cozy gathering. Melania Trump was arranging the silverware with a personal touch, while Barron Trump, now a young man, scrolled through his phone, occasionally looking up. Donald Trump himself was at the head of the table, engaged in light conversation with his eldest children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. All eyes turned to her as she entered. "Karoline," Ivanka greeted her first, stepping forward with a welcoming smile. "We're so glad you could make it." "Of course," Karoline replied, smiling back. "I appreciate the invitation." Donald Trump stood, offering her a firm handshake. "You've been doing a tremendous job. Really tremendous. The press is tough, but you handle them better than anyone. We wanted to thank you." Karoline felt a rush of gratitude. "That means a lot, Mr. President." As they all took their seats, Melania poured her a glass of wine. The conversation flowed naturally, covering everything from policy discussions to lighthearted family anecdotes. But as dinner progressed, the evening took a turn Karoline hadn't expected, one that would stay with her for the rest of her life. As the dinner progressed, Karoline found herself at ease, something she rarely felt in the high-stakes world of Washington politics. The aroma of expertly prepared steak and roasted vegetables filled the air, and the warmth of the chandelier lights gave the evening an almost surreal intimacy. Ivanka was the first to steer the conversation into personal territory. "Karoline, you've been at the center of some of the toughest press battles we've seen. How do you handle it all?" Karoline took a moment before responding. "I guess I've always been good at standing my ground. The media landscape today is aggressive, and being in this position means always being on the defensive. But at the end of the day, I believe in what I do." Donald Jr. chuckled. "Believe me, we know that feeling. The media has been after us for years, but you handle it better than most politicians." President Trump nodded. "That's why we wanted you here tonight. You're not just doing a job, Karoline. You're carrying a message. You're fighting for something bigger than yourself." His words hit deeper than she expected. She had never stopped to truly reflect on what this job meant beyond the daily press briefings and political maneuvering. To hear it framed that way, especially from the president himself, left her momentarily speechless. Melania, who had been mostly quiet, suddenly spoke. Her voice was soft yet commanding. You remind me a lot of myself when I first came to this house. I had to learn quickly that people will judge you unfairly, and no matter what you do, some will never be satisfied. But you handle it with such grace. Karoline was taken aback. The First Lady was notoriously private, rarely opening up about personal struggles. For her to acknowledge the difficulties of being in the public eye in such a heartfelt way meant more than Karoline could express. Baron, who had been listening quietly, finally added, I see the things people write about you online. It's not fair. I don't know how you stay so strong. Karoline let out a small laugh, though the weight of his words pressed on her heart. Some days are harder than others, but I believe in standing firm, no matter what. President Trump raised his glass. That's the spirit. And that's why you're sitting at this table tonight. A wave of emotion swelled in Karoline's chest. She had never considered herself sentimental, but something about this dinner, about being welcomed not as a staff member, but as part of a family discussion, stirred something deep inside her. Then, unexpectedly, Ivanka reached for Karoline's hand. We know this isn't easy, Karoline, and we just wanted you to hear it from us. You're appreciated. A lump formed in Karoline's throat. She wasn't sure if it was the sincerity in their voices, the exhaustion from months of relentless work, or simply the overwhelming kindness she was experiencing. But she knew one thing: this moment would stay with her forever. The warmth of the moment lingered as the dinner continued. The clinking of silverware against fine china was accompanied by laughter and stories from the Trump family, each anecdote revealing a side of them the media rarely captured. Karoline listened intently, absorbing the familial bonds that held them together despite the storm of politics and controversy surrounding them daily. Donald Jr. leaned back in his chair, swirling the last of his wine. You know, Karoline, I remember when my dad first ran for office. The media attacks were relentless. They went after everything. Our business, our personal lives, even our kids. And now, seeing you go toe-to-toe with them, it's impressive. Karoline smiled, though she felt a deep sense of relatability in his words. It's tough, but I guess it's part of the job. I knew what I was signing up for. President Trump chuckled. That's what I like about you. No excuses, no complaining. Just results. More people in politics should have that attitude. Melania gave Karoline a knowing glance. But even the strongest people need support. The statement hit Karoline harder than she expected. She had always prided herself on being independent, on never letting anyone see when the pressure got to her. But in truth, there were moments, late at night, after grueling press briefings, when the weight of her role felt unbearable. Ivanka leaned forward slightly, her expression soft. Have you had any time for yourself lately? Anyone to lean on? Karoline hesitated. It wasn't a question she was used to answering. I have my team, of course, but, to be honest, I haven't really thought about that much. I've been so focused on making sure I do my job right. Eric Trump, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. That's exactly what Dad does. Always working, always pushing forward. But you have to make sure you don't lose yourself in the process. For a moment, the room fell into a comfortable silence. Karoline felt something shift within her, a realization she hadn't confronted before. She had spent so much time defending the administration, standing strong against criticism, that she had neglected to consider how it was affecting her personally. Melania spoke again, her voice calm but firm. We wanted this dinner to be more than just a thank you, Karoline. We wanted to remind you that you're not alone in this. Karoline blinked, feeling her eyes sting. She hadn't expected this night to become so personal, so emotional. She had assumed it would be another political gathering, another strategic discussion. Instead, it had become a reminder of something deeper, of the humanity that still existed beyond the political battles. As dessert was served, President Trump looked at her with a rare seriousness. You remind me of someone I worked with years ago, a fighter. But even the best fighters need a corner. Karoline swallowed the lump in her throat. She had spent years proving herself, showing that she could handle the toughest challenges. But here, tonight, she realized, She didn't have to do it alone. As dessert plates were cleared away, the warmth in the room remained. Karoline couldn't shake the emotions welling up inside her. This dinner had turned into something far more personal than she had ever anticipated. Melania, ever poised and graceful, reached over and placed a gentle hand on Karoline's. I see a lot of myself in you. When I first came into this world, people judged me before they even knew me. The media called me names, twisted my words, tried to define me. I learned to block out the noise, but it was lonely. Karoline felt her chest tighten. She had never heard Melania speak so openly about her struggles. I had my husband, my family, Melania continued, glancing at Donald and Baron. But still, it was difficult. I can only imagine how hard it is for you, standing alone in that briefing room every day, facing so much hostility. Ivanka nodded. You're constantly under pressure, Karoline. We see it, even if no one else acknowledges it. Baron, who had been quiet most of the evening, suddenly spoke. I watch your press briefings sometimes. The way reporters talk to you. It's not fair. The simple, sincere statement from the president's youngest son hit Karoline harder than she expected. She had trained herself to brush off negativity, to pretend the relentless criticism didn't bother her. But in this moment, surrounded by people who truly understood, she felt something crack. Donald Trump Jr. leaned forward. We wanted you here tonight because we know what it's like to be in the fire. And we want you to know that no matter what happens, you'll always have our support. Karoline opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The lump in her throat had grown too large. For months, she had carried the weight of public scrutiny, standing alone in the storm, never allowing herself a moment of weakness. Now, as she sat at this table, hearing these words of genuine appreciation, the emotions she had buried so deeply finally surfaced. Tears welled in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice shaking. Melania gave her a reassuring smile. No need to be sorry. It only means you care. Donald Trump, who rarely displayed sentimental moments in public, nodded. Only the strong get emotional. It shows you're human. And that's a good thing. Karoline let out a soft laugh, dabbing at her eyes. She had never expected to cry at a White House dinner, least of all in front of the first family. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of relief, of realizing she wasn't as alone as she thought. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. As the evening drew to a close, Karoline took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. The emotions still lingered, but there was no shame in them, only a deep sense of gratitude. President Trump stood, signaling the end of dinner. Karoline, you've done a fantastic job. You fight for the truth and you do it with class. Not everyone can handle what you do. Ivanka smiled warmly. And we just wanted you to know, you're not alone in this. Melania walked over and gave Karoline a gentle hug. Take care of yourself. Don't forget that. As Karoline stepped out of the private dining room and into the quiet halls of the White House, she realized something had changed within her. She had come to this dinner expecting political discussions or strategy talk, but instead, she had been reminded of something far more important. She was valued not just as a professional, but as a person. The weight of the job wouldn't disappear. The media battles wouldn't stop. But tonight had given her something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. A moment of true, heartfelt connection. And as she walked toward the exit, she smiled to herself, knowing that no matter how tough things got, she had a support system she never expected.